Worsbrough village in springtime, a typical English scene. The robins sing, the church bells ring, the air is fresh and clean. The silence is just deafening, no more the days of yore. The long-forgotten collieries can be heard no more. But hark, a mobile phone rings, it drowns the clock that chimes. The clues are there, a silent prayer for the misery of past times. The coroner's court at Mason's, as busy as can be. The colliery owners own thee, no justice for me and thee. But picture the grieving widows and bairns that lost their dad, the never-ending funerals with faces oh so sad. So let's go back to old Barnsley. The town was built on coal, Victorian mines. There are still signs when men went down a hole.
Hello, I'm Dave Cherry, and I'm here in my own backyard, St Mary's Church at the lovely Worsbrough village. And I want to ask you all a question. What has these two film clips got in common?
I am a Barnsley lass, you know, I'll teach thee the answer.
So the answer is Tom Selleck. You all know him, Magnum and Blue Bloods later. Well, we've got to start here with his mother. They called his mother Martha Jagger, her maiden name Martha Jagger. And her great three greats grandfather was Thomas Jagger, and it's him who we're interested in. He was born in Crittleston in 1805 and he moved here in Worsbrough. But he was killed down here at a pit, what were called Worsbrough Park Field. So we're on his way down there to investigate all this. I've got Wayne here, Wayne Sleight, who actually worked at this pit here, Barra, as indeed I did. I left in 1974. Yeah. And I'm just looking, Wayne, the actual pit in question, Worsbrough Park Field, were in that area over here. So Barra opened in 1875 and it closed after a strike. You all went to Barnsley Main, didn't you?
We all transferred to Barnsley Main.
1990, something in that time. So, yeah. As I say, this is area in question where he got killed. This inquest were at Mason's Arms, Worsbrough Dale, and the coroner, Mr. Badger. He says here, the unfortunate man has left behind a wife and 6 kids, 6 children. Thomas was buried on 7th of May in Darfield Chapel. Darfield Chapel, Worsbrough though, that's Worsbrough.
Where did this Tom Jagger live then, Dave?
He lived in Coker Lane in Worsbrough Dale. Right. Now then, Coker Lane is actually West Street. Yeah. It changed its name in late 1850s, so that's where they lived.
Right.
And he left behind, as I say, a wife and 6 kids. So, we're in my hometown of Barnsley, and we're on our way to the Barnsley Chronicle offices to see the editor, Andrew Harrod, because he was the man who set the story off. Well, we're in the hallowed ground of the famous Barnsley Chronicle offices, and with the editor here, the boss man, Andrew Harrod. And it was Andrew who set me off on this trail. So can you explain, Andrew, to everybody how it all started?
It all started with a Facebook message. Now, most of our Facebook messages can be a bit unpleasant at times. It's people complaining or moaning about whatever. But this one was from someone who had no obvious connection with Barnsley. And he just messaged saying, I've just been doing a bit of research and found that Tom Selleck, the Magnum star, his family come from Barnsley. It's on Wikipedia. Now, I don't know about you, I've always thought, as Abraham Lincoln famously said, Wikipedia, 63% of all the posts on Wikipedia are made up. Yeah. But when we looked, sure enough it was there, Tom Selleck, the mining family from Barnsley. The problem is, it was so long ago that we would have not really had the resources to be able to dig into it.
It's the most interesting story, Andrew. Only this morning I've got this lady from Bradford, Caroline. She sent me some stuff. 6 more accidents, so it's getting near this 30 figure, isn't it? It's remarkable what happened in them days.
Yeah, it's very sad that somebody lost so many relatives.
BBC Radio Sheffield, you're listening to Paulette. I have the pleasure of the company of Dave Cherry and also Andrew Harrod, who is the editor of the Barnsley Chronicle. And we talk getting to the bottom of Tom Selleck's roots being in Barnsley, which no one can really believe. Well, you wanted to add a little bit of extra to this, actually, Andrew,
yeah,
didn't
there's
you?
a strange series of coincidences involving this story, in that back in 1995, so a long time ago, we carried a story then about a couple from Barnsley who'd left the town and gone to live in America, and then ended up working for Tom on his ranch in Montana or somewhere, I can't remember exactly. The woman was his personal chef, nice life, if you can, nice way if you can get it, and the husband was his head of security. Now, the woman has moved on to another celebrity since, but the husband, we believe, is still working for Tom on his ranch, and consequently Tom has seen the story that we carried, so he's aware of it all. I think he's quite shocked to discover what his roots.
Is he coming to talk to us?
Dave's agreed to foot the bill for a transatlantic flight, so that's fine.
You're going to give my number, Andrew, so we can have a chat with him on
passed
here?
it to me 3 times already.
All right.
Well, I'm with my old mate here, Lin Taylor. He actually worked at Barra when he was a bit younger, and now he's a guide at the Cap House Coal Mining Museum in Wayfield, and he's done a great study of the 1840s piece. Come on, Lin, tell us what you know.
I initially worked at Barra Pit, served my apprenticeship there. It was coming to an end, so I changed careers. But at the time, I realised that there were other pits in the area which got me interest up. I remember the Swathe main shaft being open, and I was able to, before it became a refuse tip, able to throw house bricks down and hear them rattling down shaft, and just one strand of barbed wire round to stop Medlam's sheep from falling over into the shaft.
At Swathe?
At Swathe, yeah. An actual friend, one of the colliery joiners, lived at the house where Worsbrough Park Colliery's shaft was.
I want to know what it was like in them days, 1840s, just before big pits opened. That's what I'm after.
All the Worsbrough or Dove Valley, there's small mines all over.
It shows all big pits like Swathe and Edmonds and Darley. Well,
Yeah.
we know what happened to them. But look at these pits here. New Victoria, Ellywell pit, as well as Prince Albert.
Yeah.
That one at Kendall Green. It's fascinating. And look at this one over here, Rockley pit. But they mark this symbol Dales to explain to them what a Dale was.
It usually referred to either a drift or a very shallow mine, with only a few miners employed there.
Right.
Well, think about it, where I did my training at Grimethorpe. Massive colliery, Grimethorpe Colliery, 1,000 yards deep. Within the confines of Grimethorpe Pit Yard was Ferrymoor Colliery, which was 72 yards deep, mining the shafting coal. Only 200 and odd men worked there, so the grimy blokes used to call it a day oil, because it was a shallow pit.
Yeah, but think on, Lynn, that a day oil, it'd be cheaper in them, an expensive shaft.
Oh, yeah.
It was money.
Follow the coal in.
It was money, though, that.
Where the coal outcropped on the hillsides, or even on the surface, follow that coal in.
While I've got you, Lynn, I must go back to the actual coroner's inquest. Remember when he got killed? What was that word? If knocking
Punch
out
or
a punch?
punch or something.
Right, explain what a
we
punch.
can only think it's a prop that were used to hold the coal up while they undercut. If there were, which we suspect mining the Barnsley seam, it was 7-8 foot thick there. So they'd undercut it to try and pull everything down, to chop everything down then.
So this word punch, it could be a prop or a sprag.
That's what we think.
The Yorkshire dialect word for a sprag. So what happens, he knocks his sprag out and all what comes in.
Yeah.
Lynn, this moving progress, I've noticed this. How 3 men were killed at Gen Lane pit. 1755, that's early. John Tattersall at Elmer's pit, that's another one, 1765. Now then, he was killed, but slain on the bishop's transcript. So, why would bishop say slain?
Well, the church would look at deaths in different ways.
Yeah.
And perhaps didn't like the landowner, make it sound a little bit worse.
I'm just thinking, Lynn, all this news about this fella, this Tom Selleck. What would you think about Brigandale now? I wonder. Well, I say you learn something every day. Pat Ittle. Thanks a lot, Lynn. I'm with my good friend Jane Ainsworth here, who has done a lot of research on this story.
Well, thanks for involving me, Dave, because it's Tom Selleck's link to Barnsley is fascinating. It really ought to be made into a Hollywood or a Netflix film. Tom's 3 times great-grandfather, Thomas Jagger, was killed in the Worsbrough Parkfield Colliery in a fall of coal on the Saturday the 5th of May 1844. He was only 39. He was married with 10 children, 4 of whom had died in infancy. And I discovered this morning the youngest died just about 2 weeks before he was killed in the colliery accident.
I saw that.
Local newspapers reported the tragedy, and a witness stated that 30 more members of the Jagger family had been killed in mining accidents. Yes, it was a sort of comment that you can't necessarily believe there were exactly 30 other members of the family. And the other thing to remember is as well, of course, that some of them were through marriages, and therefore the surname wouldn't be Jagger. I mean, I've done quite a lot of work looking at the Coal Mining History Resource Centre lists and things to find any information that I can. The only people I can actually confirm that died, that were members of the family, were Thomas's father, but I haven't found when he died, or in which colliery he died, and 2 brothers of Thomas, and the son of one of them. So he lost 2 brothers and a nephew in one colliery disaster.
Right, Jane, the story of his widow, Elizabeth, it's fascinating. If you can tell us more about her.
On the 3rd of July 1844, which was just 2 months after Thomas was killed, a court order was granted to 2 Worsbrough overseers, John Spencer Stanhope of Cannon Hall and Godfrey Wentworth of Woolley Manor, to remove Elizabeth and her 5 children under working age to Criggleston.
So these wealthy colliery owners, the landowning classes, Stanhope and Wentworth, 2 local names, they wanted her out, they wanted to evict her.
Sadly, yes. I mean, basically the former had no legal responsibility for miners killed or injured in their collieries at that time, and the latter, as members of the wider Barnsley Pool Law Union, just wanted to minimise the cost to taxpayers, because basically you'd got a woman and 5 children who were dependent. The removal was to Criggleston because Thomas Jagger had been born there, although he'd actually been working in Worsbrough for at least 18 years.
You were born in Criggleston 1807, if
yeah.
Right.
So the Criggleston overseers appealed against the order in October of that year, and it was quashed. So the Worsbrough overseers had to pay £13 for Criggleston's costs. The thing is that we don't know now how much it would have cost to keep Elizabeth and her children in a workhouse, and they would have been working out how much it would cost them if they were responsible for her.
Money.
And hence they were willing to persist, and they were pretty determined, because the Worsbrough overseers tried again at the next quarter sessions in February 1845, when there were 4 young children, because another one had gone out to work. Going out to work in those days, anything from 11 to 13. So Criggleston appealed this time in April 1845, and the decision was postponed. But then on the 7th of July 1845, the order of removal was confirmed for Elizabeth and her children to leave Worsbrough.
So she to move some 13 miles to Criggleston, which must have been horrible, absolutely horrible.
And the thing is, all of the children were born in Worsbrough, because she was married in Worsbrough and they lived in Worsbrough. But that was the games they played in those days, to avoid having to pay for it. The thing is, we don't actually know where she was staying from
that 10 years.
1845 until the next census, because of the censuses being every 10 years. But I did find in 1851 that she was back in Worsbrough Dale.
Back in Dale.
And she was living next door to Thomas Jagger's brother.
Right.
And she had actually been living next door to William Jagger back in 1841 when Thomas was still alive. So I thought that was really interesting because it almost looked like she might have actually stayed in Worsbrough Dale.
And at the end of the day, Jane, she dies in 1858, age 54.
She does, yeah. She wasn't very old at all when she died.
Shocking.
But I mean, I know a lot of people did die quite young in those days, but she'd had a pretty tough life.
Yeah.
They only had one son between them, Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Robert, he's the next in line, and that carries forward to Tom Selleck's mum, Martha.
Martha, yeah.
Well, I've got to say this, it's an art-rendering story to us all, and it's shocking, it's absolutely shocking that the pit owners, landowning classes, were adamant to throw this poor woman, this poor girl, out of her home at any cost. Victorian cruelty at its worst. Absolutely shocking.
Yes, but they got the last laugh though, didn't they? Because they produced some Tom Selleck.
All right. So you followed it down, yeah. Well, that's your lot for now, and I hope you've enjoyed my little film, and I'll see you again. But for now, I'll love you and leave you. Dave Cherry. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel.